Welcome back to Bedtime Blocks. Tonight's stories are raw and unforgettable, moments where love, trust, and choices collide in ways that change everything. What would you do if the person you trusted most kept the biggest secret of all? So settle in, get cozy, and let the night take you deeper. Story 1. She cheated at my sister's wedding. She cheated on me. That's the sentence that won't stop echoing, no matter how I try to sand the edges off it. I tasted it first like bad champagne at my sister's wedding, bubbles going sharp in my throat. The hall smelled like eucalyptus and warm cake. The DJ was on his third throwback track. Everyone sparkled under strings of Edison bulbs that made the room feel like a slowed-down sunset. And then there was her, taller than the centerpiece roses, laughing too close to someone whose cufflinks flashed when he touched her elbow. I told myself I was seeing shadows. The band slid into yellow, and I tried to be present, clinked my glass, toasted my sister, watched her sway with her new husband like a tide that knew exactly where shore was. My girlfriend waved at me across the room. She did it with the same small wave she gave when she was shy, fingers tucked, wrist bent, a soft apology. That wave used to make me feel chosen. Tonight, it felt like a placeholder. When I reached her, the guy disappeared into the crowd like a fish cutting dark water. She smelled like powdered sugar and whatever perfume lives somewhere between salt and flowers. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I lied, mouth dry. "You?" She smoothed my tie. "Nervous for your speech?" I nodded, but my eyes tracked the invisible wake that guy had left, the way her smile relaxed after he was gone. The speeches started. My mom crying into her napkin, my dad pretending he wasn't, and when it was my turn I read the lines I'd practiced in the car. People laughed in the right places. Someone said, "Ah." I mentioned the way my sister met her husband over a broken umbrella and how he held it anyway, a ridiculous shared roof. Everyone clapped. I should have felt the warm rush. Instead I watched her phone light up, turn face down, and light again, the way a lighthouse insists there's a coastline you can't see yet. I took a breath that landed wrong, and told myself I'd deal with it after the cake. And that's how I walked into the bathroom with a smile glued on, already rehearsing the conversation I swore I wasn't going to start tonight. I read her messages. I wish I could say I didn't, that I'm better than that, but the truth is uglier and more human. In the quiet of the hallway, between the photo booth and a stack of folded high-top tables, she handed me her clutch so she could fix a hairpin. The bag was light as a bird. Her phone buzzed inside, 1, 2, 3 times, steady as rain. I told myself it was nothing. Then I told myself, just check the banner. Just the name. Just enough to steady your breathing. I've never been good at stopping where I say I will. The screen woke to a thread pinned with a tiny red heart, and a name I didn't know. Catering. My stomach went low. The top message said, "You looked unreal in that dress. Hard to focus on dessert plating." Her reply, "Behave." Him, no. I swallowed. The hallway smelled like mop water and lemon cleaner. A dishwasher hummed like a distant engine. The photo booth curtain rippled with laughter. In the mirror opposite, I saw myself holding a clutch that wasn't mine, wearing a suit that suddenly felt rented even though I paid for it. My thumb hovered, and then I did the thing you can't undo, opened the thread. There they were, weeks of messages, nothing explicit enough to screenshot without context, everything explicit enough to curdle a stomach. "Wish you could stay later, you make work dangerous. When's the next time you're helping me prep?" Her replies wore the kind of grin a person puts on when they're good at pretending it's a joke, except the jokes mapped a road. "Babe?" she said behind me, voice bright and unsuspecting. I locked the screen so fast it smudged, dropped the phone back into the velvet. I turned as if I'd been admiring the framed seating chart. "Just needed air," I said, and it came out thin. She stepped closer, slid her hand into the crook of my arm. "You always get in your head at events," she teased, and I let her because the alternative was confessing I'd stepped into a story I couldn't unread. Music swelled, someone shouted for the bouquet toss. She pulled me toward the dance floor. I went, because walking away would have made it real, and I wasn't ready to stop pretending. Not yet. Which is how I ended up dancing under warm lights and colder thoughts, counting beats and waiting for a moment to ask a question I didn't know how to shape without wrecking the night. I asked her who he was. I did it on the balcony, where the night air was crisp and smelled faintly of rain that hadn't committed. Beyond the railing, the parking lot turned glossy under lamps, cars like sleeping animals with warm hoods. Inside, the DJ shifted into fast songs, and the room vibrated with shoes and laughter. Out here, my voice felt too loud. "Who's from catering?" I asked, as plain as I could manage. Her face moved through three expressions I'd never seen arranged together: surprise, calculation, and a kind of weary sadness that made me hate myself for noticing it. "He's staff," she said then. "We flirt." It was harmless. Harmless sits in a person's mouth like gum that's lost its flavor. I leaned on the railing, metal cold through my shirt. "It doesn't read harmless." She flinched like I'd thrown something. "You looked?" I saw notifications. "I didn't plan to." "But you did." Her hands were shaking. I watched her ring catch the light, thin gold, the one I gave her last fall because she loves small things that feel secret. "It's your sister's wedding," she said softer. "Can we not do this now?" That was the reasonable sentence, the one that suggested I could be the bigger person for 3 more hours and figure out how to dissolve later. But I'd already swallowed the hook. It was lodged. "Are you with him?" I asked. The words felt like they were made of ash. She leaned closer, forehead pinched. "No. I haven't slept with anyone. I swear. Truth is messy. Lies are smooth." Her sentence had texture. I believed the edges and still wanted to crawl out of my skin. "Then what is it?" She looked over the railing, watching a couple sneak a cigarette beside a hedge. "I like being wanted without being complicated," she said. "He didn't know my family or my history or the ways I disappoint you." "The ways she disappoints me." The phrase landed like a dropped glass. "I don't." I started, but she raised a hand. "It's not about you being cruel," she said. "It's about me going fuzzy at the edges lately and letting attention be a flashlight." The door banged open. My cousin stumbled out laughing, saw our faces, and backed inside like she'd opened a church mid-prayer. We stood there while the song changed again, an entire room pulsing behind us like a heartbeat we were out of rhythm with. And that's how we came back in, not settled, just stabilized enough to smile for photos, each of us quietly rearranging furniture inside our heads and pretending we hadn't discovered a load-bearing wall. I left before the sparkler exit. My sister had planned the whole tunnel of light thing, glittering sticks held high while they ran through and kissed at the end like a movie's last frame. I'd promised to help wrangle the lighters. Instead, I told her I felt sick and slipped out with my tie loose, heat still clinging to my collar. The night smelled like wet asphalt and wilted flowers. I sat in my car and watched people move in the windows like shadow puppets. Her text came in stacked. "Please don't go. Can we talk after? I love you." The word love felt both too small and enormous, like a sweater that used to fit. I didn't start the engine. I let the silence hang until the moon crawled out from behind a cloud. Inside, I pictured her doing the smile she does when she's trying not to cry. Lips pressed, eyes bright, cheeks refusing to cooperate. I hated that I knew every version of her face, and that knowledge didn't save us from this. My phone buzzed again. I'm scared I broke something I can't fix. I typed and erased 3 replies. What finally stuck was, "Come outside." She came out without a coat, goosebumps stippling her arms, clutch still in hand like she might run back and slip into the rest of the evening if this went badly. She opened the passenger door and sat with both feet on the asphalt, like an anchor. "I don't know how to be with the part of you that needs that kind of attention," I said, voice low. "I don't know how to not feel like a background track." She nodded, a tiny movement. "I don't know how to be with the part of me that went looking," she said. I thought I'd grown out of it. I wanted to be the person who stands steady. A cluster of guests spilled out laughing, lighting sparklers that hissed and threw little suns. For a second, the whole parking lot looked like it was snowing fire. We watched without speaking. "I didn't sleep with him," she said again, "because sometimes you have to hold one plank solid while the rest of the bridge shakes. But I crossed lines in my head, and in words, and I knew it." I looked at her hands, capable hands, the ones that fix sticky drawers and braid small hair for our niece and wipe crumbs while we talk. My throat worked. "I need time," I said. "Not as leverage. Just time." She nodded like a pen tapping paper. "I'll give it." Sparklers burned down to dull wires. Someone hooped the couple through a tunnel of light, and distant cheers rose like surf. And that's how I drove home alone with my phone face down, knowing tomorrow would be quieter and louder at the same time, an empty house with the alarm of a clock I hadn't set. I didn't end it that night. Endings sound like doors slamming. This was more like shutting off lights one by one and learning the house by dark. The following week was a negotiation of silences. Who spoke first? Who brought up the thread? Who dared to joke about anything unrelated? Food tasted like its textures. Music felt like an argument. She offered things without being asked, passwords, context, timelines like receipts. I didn't want to police. I wanted to understand. We went to the bench where we have winter coffee and named the places we'd felt insecure. Hers were about fading. Mine were about being last on the list. They're the same wound wearing different jackets. We tried a boundary we'd never considered before, treating attention like a budget we planned together. It sounded clinical. It worked more than I expected. I watched her delete the thread. She cried, not for him, I think, but for the version of herself who needed that mirror. I cried for the part of me that equates love with being the only window in a room. My sister texted wedding photos, us on the dance floor before the balcony talk, mouths open mid-laugh, looking like two people in a postcard from a city we still might visit. I saved the picture anyway. It felt honest in its own way, joy that existed even if we were about to break it open and look at the gears. We're not tied up with a bow. We're a knot you learn how to live with, one you retie as needed, fingers clumsy then sure. If this is a Reddit post at all, it's the kind that ends with something messy like, "We're trying. I'm scared. I'm choosing." Last night, we stood in the doorway as a summer storm moved in, wind shaking the hydrangeas like someone laughing too hard. She slid her hand into mine the way she used to, no apology, no performance, just warmth. "I don't want the flashlight," she said, voice almost lost to the rain starting. "I want the room with you." I didn't say anything wise. I squeezed back. The storm arrived, and the house settled as if it knew how to take it. And that's how I find myself today, not fixed, not broken, just here, turning on a lamp in a room we're both still learning to stay in. Story 2. I got her fired. I got her fired. The sentence lands with a rubbery thud every time I say it in my head, like a ball you can't quite catch. It wasn't a heroic whistleblower moment with confetti and ethics awards. It was smaller and meaner, and even if I had reasons, they smell like smoke now. We worked, at a mid-sized marketing agency that always felt like a classroom grown too tall, white boards everywhere, cereal bar, someone's dog sleeping under the UX desk. She and I started the same month. She had a laugh that made people stop typing. I had a knack for slide decks that looked smarter than they were. We orbited. Then we collided. Then we burned up trying not to. Our relationship lived in coffee breaks and shared Ubers, the kind that makes you feel like you built a secret room inside your life. She had a boyfriend she described as comfortable. I had no one, and I told myself that was what made me honorable. Then we stole a few afternoons with flimsy excuses and came back smelling like rain and hotel shampoo. When she broke it off, she did it carefully, like setting a glass down on a table that already had water rings. "I need to repair my real life," she said, eyes wet but steady. I nodded like I agreed, like I was the adult in the room. Inside, something feral bucked and paced. 2 weeks later, a client complained about a missent file. It should have been a simple correction. But someone had to take blame. The client liked their pound of flesh artisanal and immediate. My boss floated her name as owning the relationship. My mouth moved before I could edit it. She's been distracted lately, I said. Dropping balls. Everyone looked relieved to have a narrative. I hated my voice for sounding reasonable. At home, my apartment smelled like old coffee and lemon cleaner. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to identify the exact second the line between hurt and harm blurred. And that's how I ended up at my kitchen table, composing an email that was technically true and morally crooked, the kind of sentence you can defend out loud and still feel rotten about alone. I sent the email. The subject line was something bureaucratic and forgettable. Re Q3 deliverables corrective plan. Inside, I used words like timeliness, quality assurance, ownership of error. I attached the missent file and noted that multiple reminders had been issued. That part stung. It was a lie shaped like plausible memory. When I hit send, the office hummed on. In the kitchen, someone poured cold brew. In the conference room, our creative director said vibe too many times. She walked in late, cheeks flushed, hair damp from rain, and the sight of her made my chest seize with a grief I pretended was anger. By noon, HR had called her in to chat. She looked over at me, eyebrows knitting in question. I gave what I thought was a neutral shrug. My stomach churned like a washing machine on the wrong cycle. She came back 30 minutes later with a face that had no place to land. Then my boss pinged the team. 5 p.m. debrief on the incident. Corporate words always make disasters sound like pops on a radar instead of wrecks on a highway. At 5, we sat around the table while the sun made blinds throw bars across our arms. We take client feedback seriously, my boss said. HR nodded like a metronome. She took responsibility in the way women are asked to take it, calmly, completely, even for parts that weren't hers. I watched her do it the way you watch a glass fall. You know what's coming and can't move fast enough. After, she stopped by my desk. Did you say anything? She asked. Not an accusation. An inventory. I clicked a pen open and closed. They asked about workflow, I said. I told them what I saw. She nodded. Okay. It was the kind of okay that means everything but consent. She left the building carrying only her laptop and something invisible she used to keep in the air between us. And that's how the weekend arrived, a long, hushed room I couldn't cross without hearing the echo of my own steps. They let her go on Monday. The email came at 9:13 a.m., subject line bland enough to hide the knife. Team update. HR thanked her for contributions and wished her well in future endeavors. The office did the thing it always does when something human happens, kept moving. Someone argued about fonts. Someone else celebrated a new dog. I sat there with my hands hovering above the keyboard, feeling the ghost weight of a decision I'd made in tiny increments. She texted me one word, why? I didn't answer for an hour. When I finally did, I embarrassingly tried logic. It wasn't personal. The client. She replied, you could have corrected it, and you chose to write it down. That line gutted me because it was the thing I'd been avoiding naming. Choosing to write it down is different than correcting it, different than looking someone in the eye and saying you made a mistake and we'll fix it. Writing it down makes it permanent. Writing it down invites consequence. That night, the apartment felt wrong at all temperatures. I walked to the bodega for milk I didn't need, just to move. The city smelled like hot trash and late flowers. A bus exhaled at the curb, and I thought about her moving through her apartment packing a paper bag with desk plants and a candle that used to live between our monitors. When I got home, I opened a blank doc titled, Apology. The cursor blinked like a judgment. Everything I typed was either self-flagellation dressed as honesty or a plea that sounded too much like justification. I deleted paragraphs until my fingers hurt. At midnight I sent 3 sentences, I'm sorry. I was hurt, and I chose harm. You didn't deserve that. If you want me to put anything in writing to HR to correct what I said, I will. I stared at the blue light long after it stopped delivering. And that's how I ended up outside her building the next day, heart sprinting, holding a letter in an envelope because sometimes a physical thing feels more like penance than pixels. She met me on the stoop. Her hair was pulled into a loose knot. There were faint moons under her eyes, like sleep had been something she could see but not touch. "You don't get to fix this," she said, not cruel, just true. "I know," I said. I handed her the envelope anyway. Inside was the statement I'd written to HR, that my comments were colored by personal conflict, that she'd been carrying more client load than acknowledged, that the multiple reminders were fiction. It wasn't enough to rehire her. It was enough to stop the story from calcifying in the file. She opened it, read without looking up. When she finished, she folded the paper carefully like it might rip. "Why'd you do it?" she asked, and now it was the question, not the accusation. "Because I felt discarded. Because I wanted something to crack where I'd cracked. Because power feels like a coat in winter, and I was cold," I said. "Because I was small and I made you pay for it." She sat down on the top step, making room beside her I didn't take. A neighbor's wind chime teased at a melody. Somewhere down the block, a kid laughed like he'd never be tired. "I'm not innocent," she said after a while. "I made a mess with you. I wanted two lives to say yes to me at once." "That's not a firing offense," I said, trying to be funny and failing. She smiled, tired. "Maybe not. But the file was." She tapped the envelope. "This matters, though." We sat until the air cooled and shade climbed the building. "What now?" I asked. "Now you send that," she said. "And I figure myself out without the job I thought I'd have through winter. And you figure out who you are when you don't have access to quiet power." Her words landed like bread and like a mirror. I nodded. "Okay." A leaf skittered down the sidewalk. A dog dragged its owner toward the corner. We were two people on steps with a shared story either of us wanted to reread, and still, here we were. And that's how I walked to the mailbox with my apology in hand, not expecting redemption, just trying to participate in the truth I delayed. I told HR everything. They replied with a cautious, legally hydrated paragraph acknowledging receipt. I watched the calendar for any sign of reversal that never came. The client stayed. The agency moved. The desk where she kept her candle became a staging area for sample print runs. People asked about her for a week, then less. I answered with short sentences and longer silences. The office smelled like printer toner and cereal milk. The dog under the UX desk dreamed and barked at nothing. I did my work and tried to be the kind of person who corrects quietly, who puts his shoulder to the right part of the machine. It felt like moving sand with a spoon. One night, my phone lit up with a message from her, a photo of a name tag that said, "Assistant Manager, Books." "I start Monday," she wrote. Smaller paycheck, bigger breath. I stared at the photo too long, smiling in a way that hurt my face. "Congratulations," I typed, and then, after a long think, "You always did make better rooms." She liked the message and didn't reply. That was right. We're not a bow. We're a knot we decided not to keep tugging. If this is a confession, I don't get the satisfaction of absolution. I keep the memory of the moment I chose to be less than I wanted to be, and the knowledge that choices like that are made of grains, glances, emails, shrugged shoulders, words we pretend are neutral. The only redemption I trust is boring, better habits, fewer secret rooms, telling the truth before it needs an envelope. Last week, I walked past the bookstore on my lunch break. She was shelving new hardcovers, a pencil tucked in her hair like an antenna. She didn't see me. I watched for a second longer than polite and then kept moving, the bell over the door chiming an exit and a small, ordinary mercy. I got her fired. I also told the truth too late. I'm learning there's no clever ending to that. Just a long, slow decision to stop being the kind of person who reaches for a lever when what he really needs is a conversation. And that's how I'm writing this now, not to be forgiven, but so the next time my mouth tries to be reasonable at someone else's expense, I have a record of where that road goes. Story 3. He took the kids and didn't come back. He took the kids. That's the sentence I keep saying out loud because if I don't, the apartment turns into a silent movie. He picked them up for Saturday pancakes, our usual exchange, pressed a kiss to our daughter's hair, ruffled our son's cowlick, told me he'd text before they napped. The door clicked, the elevator hummed, and the place instantly smelled like the last thing we cooked together, vanilla waffles and a hint of burned butter. By noon, I'd folded laundry no one asked me to fold, scrubbed the counters that were already clean, and listened to the radiator clatter like cutlery in a drawer. The text never came. The clock did that thing clocks do when you're waiting, got loud and stupid. At 1:17 p.m. I called. Straight to voicemail. At 1:22 I called again. Hey, can you shoot me a quick update? I kept my voice light, like I wasn't counting breaths between words. I told myself normal stories. Maybe he forgot his charger. Maybe nap happened in the car, and he's letting them sleep. Maybe the diner's packed, and he doesn't want to juggle phones and syrup. The stories ran out around 2:41, and what arrived was the one I don't like. He's mad and making a point. We're 3 months into separation and improvising decency. Some days we're good at it. Some days we're bruised fruit pretending not to be. I boiled water for tea I didn't drink. I checked the window like weather would explain this. Down on the street, a bus sighed and someone laughed too big. My daughter's watercolor sunflowers, taped to the fridge, looked like they knew something about waiting. At 3:03 I called his sister. Haven't heard, she said, gentle and honest. Want me to ping him? The word ping felt so small I wanted to throw it. Please, I said, and the please tasted like tin. And that's how I started the list. Times called, times texted, people notified. Because once you enter a certain kind of worry, you start building a record even if you hope you'll never need it. At 3:47, panic turned into paperwork. I called the non-emergency line with a voice I'd used to report a pothole, because if I let my real voice out it would flood the city. The operator asked for ages, heights, last known location, what they were wearing. Blue hoodie with a dinosaur, I said, picturing our son roaring at the mirror this morning, milk mustache like a tiny king. Pink rain boots even though it isn't raining. I added about our daughter, because her boots make her brave. Is the father court ordered to return them at a specific time? The operator asked. The word father thudded. We have a written plan we're trying, I said. 3 to 5, pancakes and park, drop off by 6. She logged it, voice kind and procedural. I texted him again, breaking our rule about no novellas. I don't want to escalate. I need a sign you're coming back today. The typing bubble didn't appear, which felt like a meteorological event. No clouds gathering, just a blank sky that refuses to help. At 4:10, his sister wrote. He texted. All good. No details. I'm sorry. Want me to keep calling? I stared at the words until they blurred. Please, I replied, worried about what I was asking her to step into. Memories arrived like bad pop-ups. Him and me at 22, sharing a too small coat in a snowstorm, laughing our way into a corner booth. Him teaching our daughter to float by placing one palm under her spine and saying, "Trust the water." The first time he didn't come home, only an hour late that time, blaming a missed train and smelling like beer and a decision deferred. The radiator clanged. The apartment's late afternoon light turned the walls that beige that makes everything look tired. I put their pajamas on the couch, habit pretending to be ritual. At 4:31, my phone vibrated with a number I didn't recognize. A woman's voice. Hi, this is Nadia from the diner. Your kids are here with their dad. He looks overwhelmed. Do you want me to put him on? She must have found my number in the emergency contacts I handed the diner last year because our son once choked on a grape, and the waitress brought out a laminated sheet labeled choking like a game show prize. And that's how I ended up on speaker with the smell of coffee and fry oil coming through the line, reaching for a man I used to know with 2 small sets of ears on either side of him. He said he needed more time. The way he said it made time sound like bread. The kids are fine, he added, too quick. We're coloring placemats. They love it here, Nadia in the background murmured. They do, like a soft witness. More time for what? I asked, aiming for calm, landing near Brittle. To be a dad, he said, and the words cracked like ice under a boot. At your place I feel like the visiting team. I wanted a day where I wasn't signing a clipboard for their bedtime. Everything in me wanted to match his volume. Instead, I folded it down. You can be their dad while returning them at 6. I said. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. They are when you're not done being mad at me. He said, and there it was, our real conversation wearing a name tag that said custody. I'm not taking them. He added too loudly, and I pictured heads turning, crayons pausing in little hands. I'm just not ready to hand them back. I closed my eyes and saw our daughter's pink boots not quite reaching the floor of the diner chair. Put me on with them, I said. He did. Our son's voice bubbled. Mama, I made a T-Rex with green ketchup. Our daughter, we got extra napkins. Daddy said we can. I love you. I told them, keeping my voice like a blanket, not a siren. Daddy and I are figuring out the plan. You're safe. Safety, like pancakes, is a word they understand. Back to him, I said. I'm going to call our mediator. We have a woman named Darlene who wears linen and says things like, let's stand in the problem, not on each other. I used to roll my eyes at her Pinterest sentences. Today they felt like scaffolding. Don't, he said. Please, don't make this official. If you bring them home by 7, I said. I won't. My hands shook, little earthquakes. He exhaled into the phone, the sound of someone opening a door into colder air. 7, he said. I promise. Promises from him have always sounded like small creatures, tender, skittish, easy to startle into the woods. And that's how I stood at the sink rinsing 2 cups that didn't need rinsing, staring at the clock until it stopped being numbers and turned into a test I didn't remember studying for. At 7:14, I called again. Voicemail. At 7:29, another call. Voicemail. The line between reasonable and reactionary is not a sidewalk, it's fog. I left one message. I will call Darlene at 7:45. I said it like setting a timer for cookies, like something you can pull from the oven before it burns. At 7:38, knocks at the door, too many, too fast. I opened it to our daughter squealing, home, and our son waving a crumpled dinosaur like a flag. He stood behind them, eyes rimmed red, hair pushed back like he'd been raking his hands through it. The hallway smelled like rain and someone's spicy dinner. I took the long way, he said. I wanted them to see the lights by the river. Our daughter chimed. We saw a dog with a jacket, as if that detail were currency. I crouched to hug them, inhale their diner syrup hair, count their fingers like a magician. Still 10, still here. Bath time, I said, because normalcy is a boat you have to keep rowing. Say goodnight to Daddy. They did, carelessly, as children do when trust is still their default setting. He lingered in the doorway until the elevator dinged. I'm not trying to be the villain, he said. I wanted to say. Villains rarely try. I wanted to say, you made me make calls I never wanted to make. I wanted to say, you scared me into memorizing the way the sunlight hit 417 on the wall. Instead I said, don't put me in the position to choose between protecting them and protecting you. His mouth twitched like a word tried to be born and failed. I'll call Darlene tomorrow, he said, which I guess was his way of not making me be the one. He stepped backward, hands open, the elevator doors swallowing him into stainless steel. And that's how the bath ran too hot at first, and I adjusted it, and they floated bath toys like firefighters after a parade, and the apartment finally smelled like lavender and damp towels instead of fear. We rebuilt the plan with more ink. Darlene added lines about grace periods and shared calendars and a standing Tuesday call where we name one thing the other did well that week. It felt corny until it didn't. It felt like a weak bridge until it held weight. He showed up that first Tuesday with a haircut and a sentence I didn't expect. You're good at the mornings, he said. They leave your place like astronauts. I said, you're good at turning ordinary into adventure. And it was easier than I'd rehearsed. We got boring in the ways that matter. He sends a photo at the halfway mark now. Once it was a duck with too much bread, once a puddle shaped like a bear. I keep my novellas to myself and text, looks fun, even when nostalgia comes like a wave and tries to drag me into the undertow of what we were. The kids know our plan without knowing our pain. That feels like success. Sometimes at night, I still run my finger along the calendar squares, counting down to the exchange, scared of how much I want the quiet and how much I miss the noise. Wanting two opposite things at once is a human sport no one gives trophies for. Last weekend, our daughter asked, "Can Daddy come to pancakes here?" We looked at each other over her head, and I saw a man trying to be better at promises. "We can all go," I said, surprising myself, and we did. 3 plates, 2 coffees, 1 table, the waitress smiling like we were a postcard from a different town. If this is a confession, it's not that he took them and didn't come back, it's that he almost didn't, and that I live with the version of me who will always remember the hour between 6:59 and the knock on the door. I keep that hour like a stone in my pocket. It makes a map of my choices. It reminds me where the edges are. We're not together. We're not enemies. We're the parents of 2 small people who think pancakes are a holiday. That will have to be enough. Some days it feels like it is. And that's how today ended. 2 lunchboxes on the counter, a calendar that looks like a peace treaty, and me breathing normally again, which I'm not sure I'd ever truly learn how to do until I had to. Story 4, my fiancé's second phone. I found the second phone. It wasn't cinematic, no midnight buzzing under floorboards. Just a matte black rectangle tucked in the lining of his gym bag, zipped into a pocket usually reserved for protein bars, and a crumpled receipt from the time we split fries and forgot whose idea it was. I was looking for the little resistance band we both pretend we use more than we do. My fingers brushed plastic. I pulled out a phone I'd never seen, the kind you buy at a pharmacy with cash. My first thought was practical. Whose is this? Second thought, liar. Third thought, breathe. Our apartment smelled like laundry detergent and the citrus candles he lights after he cooks fish. The sunset pushed a copper stripe across the kitchen floor. I pressed the side button. It lit up with a lock screen, no notifications, just a generic beach background like it came pre-installed on Secrets. I don't know his passcode for this one. I know the passcode that opens the rest of our future, 0625, his parents' anniversary. I know the rhythm of his morning and the way he makes eggs like he's choreographing them. I know the story of how he bought my ring, how he spent a Saturday pretending to be interested in lamps while my best friend, accidentally, dragged me past the jewelry store window. But I don't know this. Keys at the door. His whistle, the 3-note thing he does when he's trying to sound casual. I slid the phone back into the bag and left the zipper half open like a trap or a mercy, not sure which. "Hey," he said, cheeks flushed from the cold, hair flipped wrong from the beanie. He put the bag down in its spot. I watched the pocket like it might bite. "You okay?" he asked, that soft check-in he has that makes me want to tell the truth even when the truth is messy. And that's how I decided not to ask immediately, because I wanted to see what the phone did when it thought we weren't watching. I waited and the phone waited back. For 2 days, it was a rock at the bottom of a pond, shape visible, purpose hidden. He went about his rhythms, morning run, emails at the counter, calling his mom on Tuesdays to argue about the best olive oil. I watched the bag like a cat watches a laser dot. Nothing. On the 3rd night, he took a long shower. Steam stitched itself along the bathroom mirror. I unzipped the pocket with my heart in my teeth. The phone was gone. A small part of me applauded his competence. A larger part wanted to throw all our spoons away because they looked like they'd been used to stir a lie. I sat on the bed. The apartment felt like a stage after the audience leaves, lights too bright, props suddenly cheap. When he came out in the towel, he caught my face. "What?" he asked, not defensive, more like a person walking into a room and forgetting why. "Do you have another phone?" I asked. I wanted to land the sentence gently. It came out like a plate set too hard. He blinked. There are moments when you can watch a person inventory their choices, deny, deflect, confess, collapse. He chose a fifth one. He told the truth in increments. It's temporary, he said. For my brother. His brother is a gravity well. He has a charm that makes waiting rooms feel like cocktail hours and a problem with gambling that has mortgaged 2 holidays and 1 friendship already. We don't say addiction lightly in our family. We write it on post-its and move them around like chess. He asked me to take calls from a guy. He said. He said it was safer if they didn't call his phone. He promised it was just for a week. The sentence sat between us like a spilled drink we both watched crawl toward the edge of the table. And that's how we didn't sleep much, me on my back rehearsing alarms, him on his side facing the window like a person listening for a sound only he believes he can hear. The phone rang during breakfast. Tinny, old-world ringtone like an auntie's flip phone. He froze, egg on the spatula midair. Caller ID. Unknown. We looked at each other like we were about to cut the right wire on a bomb in a movie we didn't audition for. He answered on speaker. A man's voice, rough with cigarettes and the theater of threats. Where's Mark? He asked. He's late. Mark is the brother with the gravity well. He's in a program, my fiancé said, sticking to the script I didn't know existed. I'm handling his schedule. Payments will be on Fridays. He'll call when he's allowed phone time. Tell Mark he better not go wholly on me, the voice said. I got rent too. Then a click. The phone turned back into plastic. My fiancé put the spatula down carefully, like eggs could explode. I didn't want this near you, he said. I shouldn't have let it near us. I wanted to be noble and say, we're a team. What I said was more honest. I don't want our wedding vows to include debt collectors and burner phones. I watched his face crumple in the small way men's faces are allowed to crumple when they're trying not to cry. We can take it to the police, he said, then immediately shook his head, talking himself out of it. But then Mark loses the program. He's on thin ice. They'll say he's managing outside contact. We called Dahlia instead, our therapist, who looks like she can bench press secrets. Over speaker, she said, you're both trying to control chaos that isn't yours. Let's draw a boundary shaped like a door, not a wall. A door you can close. What does that look like? I asked, tired of metaphors, hungry for grocery lists. Your fiancé informs the caller once, only once, that all communications go through a lawyer or the treatment program. He tells Mark the same. After that, any call goes unanswered. Then you both decide if your marriage includes managing Mark's consequences. Not his comfort. His consequences. We stared at the phone like it might grow legs and leave. And that's how my fiancé called Mark's counselor from my phone, because transparency felt like an exorcism we could do together. We set the boundary and it bled. My fiancé told the caller, voice steady. All communications go through the program from now on. The man laughed like a scratched CD. Cute, he said and hung up. 2 hours later, unknown again. We let it die on the counter like a tiny, stubborn animal. Mark called from the facility's approved line that evening, voice shaky and furious. You knocked me out, he said. You love rules more than blood. I love you enough to not help you drown us, my fiancé said, and there it was, the sentence I fell in love with him for, even while it broke something in him to say it. The second phone stopped ringing after 2 days. Quiet arrived like fog, immediate when you step into it, gradual if you're watching from the window. We breathed in it. We took out the trash and the burner together, dropping both into their respective cans with a weight I felt in my knees. Then came the smaller negotiations that feel like marriage boot camp. We wrote a list under a magnet, what we tell each other right away. It included money over $200, unexpected visitors, new electronics that are not lamps, and anything with the words just for a week. We laughed, a real one, the kind that lets you be less careful for a minute. His mom called the next Tuesday. Heard you kids are making rules, she said, trying to sound teasing and landing on proud. Proud of you. We both cried after we hung up because permission sometimes arrives in voices that taught you how to hold a spoon. Nights got ordinary again. He scrolled through venues with terrible carpeting. I compared napkin colors like they were choices at the edge of a cliff. Ordinary can be a miracle if you've lived in emergency long enough. And that's how we could finally talk about the real thing, the fact that he'd kept the phone secret at first, and what partner means when secrets arrive disguised as rescues. We postponed the wedding by 1 season. Not as punishment, as practice. We wanted to see ourselves doing a new kind of ordinary long enough to trust it from the inside. We wrote vows in the notes app and set them beside the grocery list. We went to 2 more sessions with Dahlia where she had us rehearse saying, "I'm scared and I still choose you," without sounding like we were reading lines. Mark finished the first phase of treatment. He sent a group text that said, "I'm sorry to everyone I owe money or sleep to." It was both too little and exactly enough for that day. The man with the smoker's voice never called again. Maybe boundaries work. Maybe he found another brother. I'm not naive about either possibility. Sometimes I still think about the first time I felt the second phone in the gym bag. The cold shape of it against my palm. It's a fossil now in the layer of our life where we almost learned the wrong lesson, that secrecy is love. We named the right lesson instead, that love can carry heavy things, but it can't carry them in the dark. Last week, he came home with a single-use phone-shaped box, empty, a prop, and set it on the table. "For us," he said, smiling. Inside he'd put 2 tiny rings of gold wire, the kind jewelers use when they're sizing something. "Practice rings," he said. "For building." We laughed and cried like people who finally get the joke. If this reads like a confession, it is. I almost let a secret live in our house because it wore my favorite mask, the one labeled help. I still want to rescue everyone I love. I'm learning to rescue the future I picked, too. We rescheduled for midsummer. The venue still has terrible carpeting. The napkins will be whatever white means hopeful. When I look at him across the table now, I don't imagine a perfect life. I imagine a door we know how to close together and open again, on purpose. And that's how I'm ending this, with a calendar invite that feels like a promise and a kitchen that smells like burnt toast because we were kissing instead of watching it. Ordinary, messy hours. Story 5. My mother told him my secret. My mother told him my secret. I didn't hear it directly. I pieced it together from the way his face went slack at dinner, fork halfway to his mouth, as if the roast chicken suddenly turned to ash. My mother's smile was bright, too bright, the kind of smile she uses when she thinks she's been helpful. The candle on the table flickered hard, making shadows stretch like they wanted to leave the room. The secret wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a buried fortune or an alternate identity. It was simpler, rawer. I can't have kids. I told my mom one night in her kitchen, the smell of onions still clinging to my hair, my voice cracking between syllables. She nodded, kissed my cheek, and said, "It doesn't change your worth." I believed her. I never imagined she'd pass it along without asking. He set his fork down, carefully, like it weighed more than silver. "So," he said, his tone wrapped in gauze, "this is something." My mother beamed as if she'd opened the right gift. "I told him because honesty is the best start to a marriage," she said. Marriage. The word she drops into every third conversation like seasoning. I felt my chest tighten. "Can we talk privately?" I asked. My mother's eyebrows arched, but she excused herself, humming as she gathered plates. He didn't look at me right away. The room smelled like rosemary and tension. I wanted to rewind 30 minutes to when we were laughing about his terrible parking skills, to the moment before the candlelight revealed something I hadn't chosen to reveal. "You weren't going to tell me?" he asked finally. His voice wasn't sharp. It was worse, disappointed. "I was," I said. "Just on my own terms." And that's how the air between us turned into glass, fragile and reflective, showing me a version of myself I wasn't ready to see. We drove home in silence. The car's heater blew too hot, fogging the windows, but I didn't roll mine down. His hand stayed fixed at 10 and 2, knuckles pale. The city lights blurred, wet and yellow, making everything look like it was underwater. Finally, at a stoplight, he said, "How long have you known?" "Since college," I admitted. The word carried a decade of doctor visits, quiet bathroom tears, and one particularly cruel Christmas where my cousin announced her third pregnancy over eggnog. "And you didn't think I deserved to know earlier?" His voice cracked, not from anger, but from something thinner, like betrayal's first cousin. "I wanted to tell you when it mattered," I said. "Not on the first date, not when we were still learning each other's coffee orders. I wanted you to know me first, me, not my missing pieces." He exhaled sharply. "But now I feel like I fell in love with a half-truth." The words landed like stones. Half-truth. As if love had an equation and I'd handed him bad math. My chest ached. "I'm still me," I whispered. "I'm still the person who knows you hum when you're nervous, who stays up to watch dumb sci-fi shows with you even though I hate aliens. That hasn't changed." The light turned green, and he drove on. The city outside glittered like it didn't care. And that's how we pulled into the driveway without touching, the air thick with everything unsaid, the car suddenly too small to hold both of us, and the truth my mother had set free. The fight came in whispers. We didn't shout. Shouting would have felt cleaner. Instead, we sat at opposite ends of the couch, words sliding across the rug like cold marbles. "I imagined us having kids," he said, voice tight. "Not immediately, but eventually. That's part of how I saw the future. I imagined telling you myself," I countered. "I imagined choosing a moment where I could explain, where I could show you the ways families can be built without biology." He rubbed his temples. "Adoption, fostering, maybe. But I needed the choice." "I know," I whispered. "I wanted to give you that choice when we were stronger. Not when we were still fragile enough that this would feel like a deal breaker instead of a detail." "A detail?" His laugh was bitter. "This isn't forgetting to mention you hate cilantro. This is foundational." Silence stretched. The clock ticked, loud and judgmental. I remembered the doctor's office, the sterile smell, the chart she pushed across the desk. I remembered thinking, who will ever love me with this shadow attached? "I was afraid," I admitted, voice cracking. "Afraid you'd leave if I told you too soon. Afraid I'd never even get to be loved." His face softened, but his eyes stayed guarded. "And now? Now I know waiting hurt us anyway." And that's how the night bled into morning, our words circling, either of us sure if we were building something or dismantling it piece by piece. We tried therapy. He suggested it, which surprised me. "If we're going to make this work, I need help understanding," he said. So we sat in a small room that smelled faintly of lavender, with a woman who wore scarves that looked like constellations. She asked us to talk about what family meant. He said legacy, laughter, Sunday breakfasts. I said safety, chosen bonds, filling the room with people who wanted to stay. "Do you love her?" the therapist asked him directly. He nodded, immediately, as if love was the one solid thing left. "Do you want to be with him?" she asked me. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Then the question," she said gently, "is whether your definition of family can flex without breaking." We sat with that sentence like it was a puzzle box. He admitted he'd always pictured a daughter with his eyes, a son with his laugh. I admitted I'd pictured exactly that too, before I learned it wasn't possible. "Grieve that picture," she told us. "Together. Then decide if there's another one you can hang on your wall." After the session, we walked home through crisp autumn air. He reached for my hand, tentative. I let him. The world smelled like leaves and wood smoke. For the first time since the dinner table, I felt like maybe there was a version of us that survived. And that's how we ended that week, still scared, still raw, but holding hands anyway, because sometimes the smallest gesture is the loudest declaration. We're still figuring it out. Some days he's quiet, lost in futures he has to mourn. Some days I'm angry at my mother for ripping the bandage off before I was ready. But other days, good days, we talk about possibilities. Adoption brochures on the counter. A friend who froze her eggs offering to be a surrogate. Fostering older kids who need a soft place to land. He told me last night, "I don't know what our family will look like. But I know I want you in the picture." I cried, not because everything was fixed, but because hope had found its way back into the room. My mother apologized, tearful, saying she thought she was protecting me. I'm not sure I forgive her yet. Secrets aren't hers to spend. But maybe one day I'll see it as clumsy love. If this is a confession, it's not just about the secret. It's about fear, the kind that makes you hold back truth, the kind that makes you test love in the shadows. I wish I'd been braver. I'm learning now. He and I are still engaged. The wedding's still on. And when we write our vows, we'll write them knowing every fragile, broken, hopeful piece of us is already on the table. No more secrets. No more waiting. And that's how I end this, not with certainty, but with his hand in mine, our therapist's words echoing, grieve together, build together, choose together. And we are. Story 6. He proposed after the fight. He proposed after the fight. It sounds romantic when I say it like that, but the truth is messier, like lipstick smudged on a wineglass. We had just screamed ourselves hoarse over something stupid that wasn't stupid, whose turn it was to pay the electricity bill, which turned into who always carries the weight, which turned into who loves who more unevenly. The apartment reeked of burnt takeout, pad thai we'd abandoned mid-argument. A fork lay on the floor, abandoned like a casualty. My chest ached from words I couldn't take back. Maybe you're not cut out for this. His eyes had gone glassy. He'd said, "Maybe I'm not." And then, like he was rewiring the moment, he dropped to his knees. At first I thought he was picking up the fork. But then he pulled a small box from his hoodie pocket, cheap velvet worn at the corners. My stomach lurched. "Marry me," he said. Not with flowers or violins. With a voice that cracked in the middle, raw from shouting. I stared, mouth dry, throat tight. "Now?" "Yes," he said. "Because even when we're awful, I want it to be with you. Because if I can fight this hard, it means I care this much. Marry me." The world tilted. The room smelled of soy sauce and regret. My hands shook. "You're insane," I whispered. "Yeah," he said, eyes desperate. "Insane about you." And that's how I found myself crying on the couch, torn between fury and love, staring at a ring that sparkled under the ugliest fluorescent light we owned. I didn't say yes. Not immediately. I sat there, knees pulled to my chest, while he stayed on the floor, hand extended like a plea. The silence roared louder than our fight had. Finally I said, "You can't use marriage as a bandage." My voice cracked, but I meant it. "We need to fix what's underneath, not just cover it up with a shiny promise." He swallowed. "It's not a bandage. It's me saying I don't want anyone else. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." I looked at him. Messy hair, cheeks flushed, hoodie smelling faintly of laundry and sweat. Not a prince in a fairy tale. A man with flaws, with fire, with hands that sometimes tremble when he's trying to do the right thing. "I need time," I said. He nodded, slipping the box closed with trembling fingers. He didn't put it away, though. He set it on the table between us, a silent witness. That night we slept back to back, not touching, but both of us glancing at the ring box in the dark like it was a question we couldn't answer yet. And that's how morning came, with stiff necks, cold pad thai, and a ring-shaped shadow stretching across the kitchen table. We talked in daylight. Coffee steaming between us, sunlight painting the walls. The fight felt smaller in the morning, but the question felt bigger. "Why now?" I asked. "Why after the worst version of us?" "Because that's real," he said. "Anyone can promise love when it's easy. I want to promise it when it's ugly. Last night scared me." "I thought you might walk out." I realized I'd rather ask broken than not ask at all. Tears pricked my eyes. What if broken is all we'll ever be? Then at least we'll be broken together, he said, fierce and foolish. I laughed through the tears. He smiled, relief softening his face. We reached across the table, fingers grazing. We didn't fix everything in that conversation. We still argued over bills and dishes. But now there was a ring box on the counter, an unspoken reminder. This is bigger than the fight. And that's how we spent the weekend, walking the city, not engaged yet, not single either, two people circling a question shaped like forever. The yes came later. Not with fireworks, not even with wine. It came on a Tuesday night, sitting on the fire escape, watching the city breathe. He was telling a dumb story about work, how the printer ate someone's proposal, and I laughed until my stomach hurt. The laughter felt like oxygen. When it faded, I turned to him. Ask me again, I said. His eyes widened. Now? Yes, I whispered. Now. He scrambled inside, grabbed the box, nearly tripped over the cat. He came back out breathless. Dropped to one knee again, this time under the stars instead of a ceiling light. Marry me? Yes, I said. Simple. True. Tears slipped down my cheeks as the city buzzed below us, oblivious. He slipped the ring on my finger. It wasn't perfect. It was slightly too big. But it caught the light, and so did his eyes. And that's how we became engaged, not in a fairy tale, but in the middle of real life, with flaws and laughter and a fire escape view that felt like ours alone. We're not a perfect couple. We still fight. Sometimes loudly, sometimes with silence. But every time I look at the ring, I remember that night, the chaos, the shouting, the desperate proposal, and I remember why I said yes anyway. Because love isn't polished. It's messy. It's burnt pad thai and slammed doors and laughter that breaks through when you least expect it. It's choosing each other when it would be easier not to. We're planning a small wedding. No fairy lights, no grand gestures. Just us, family, friends, maybe a taco truck. Something real. Something that looks like us. If this is a confession, it's that I almost said no. That I almost let the fight eclipse the love. But I didn't. And now every time we argue, I remember, he asked me to marry him at our worst. And I said yes at our best. And that's how I'm writing this now, ring glinting in the glow of my laptop, fiancé humming off-key in the kitchen, our messy love story still unfolding, still ours, still enough. Thanks for listening tonight on Bedtime Blocks. If these stories pulled you in, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It really helps keep these stories coming. And let me know in the comments, which story stayed with you the most? Other than that, see you all in the next one.